If you've been anywhere near the weight loss corner of the internet lately, you've heard the name Retatrutide thrown around like it's already the next big thing. And a lot of the data actually backs that up. But there's a real gap between press release headlines and what's been peer-reviewed and approved. So today, we're going deep. Mechanism, the full trial history, safety, comparisons, and realistically, when you could get a prescription. Let's get into it. Retatrutide, development code LY3437943, is an investigational once-weekly injectable peptide from Eli Lilly. It's a subcutaneous injection, a small pinch of fat, usually around the abdomen. Semaglutide activates one receptor, GLP-1. Tirzepatide activates two, GLP-1 and GIP. Retatrutide activates three, GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. That's the whole reason it's called a triple agonist. And to be upfront, it is not approved anywhere in the world yet. Everything here is trial data. Quick clarification before we go further. Triple agonist doesn't mean three drugs combined. It's one molecule doing three jobs. And more targets doesn't automatically mean a better drug. Potency and balance across those three signals matter just as much as how many are involved. Across the trials, people typically start around 2 milligrams and step up every 4 weeks toward a target dose. Think of it like wading into a cold pool instead of jumping straight in. The gradual approach is what makes the deep end tolerable. Most side effects show up during that climb, not after people reach their maintenance dose. GLP-1 is the pathway you already know from Ozempic and Wegovy. It boosts satiety, slows gastric emptying, and triggers insulin release, but only when blood sugar is already high, which is called glucose-dependent insulin secretion. That's an important safety nuance. It's not force-feeding your body insulin around the clock. This is also the pathway behind food noise, that constant static pulling your attention toward eating. Activating GLP-1 is like someone finally tuning the radio dial in, quieting that background noise. It's not willpower increasing, it's the internal pull getting turned down. The trade-off is that same slowed digestion is also what causes nausea and bloating in some people. Same pathway, different side of the coin. GIP is another gut hormone released after eating. Tirzepatide is what proved this receptor mattered clinically. Pairing GIP with GLP-1 produced meaningfully bigger results than GLP-1 alone. Think of GIP like a turbocharger bolted onto an engine that's already running. It doesn't do much in isolation, but it noticeably amplifies what GLP-1 is already doing. It also touches fat tissue and energy metabolism directly, though those effects are still being mapped out. This is the piece that actually separates retatrutide from semaglutide and tirzepatide. Glucagon normally tells your liver to release stored sugar, which sounds like the opposite of what a weight loss drug should do. Think of it like opening the damper on a furnace. More fuel gets released, but if the furnace is also burning hotter at the same time, the net effect can still work in your favor. That's the working theory. GLP-1 and GIP offset the sugar release, while glucagon adds something extra on the energy burning and liver fat side. T plus 5 minutes. GIP fires, fastest responding gut hormone. T plus 15 minutes. GLP-1 follows. T plus 20 minutes. Pancreas releases insulin in response to both. T plus 45 to 90 minutes. Gastric emptying slows, satiety signal peaks. T plus 2 to 3 hours, glucagon rises as blood sugar begins to fall, releasing stored glucose to keep levels stable. Let's actually walk through what happens in your body after a normal meal, because it makes the drug mechanism much easier to picture. Within about 5 minutes of eating, GIP is released first. It's the fastest responding gut hormone. GLP-1 follows shortly after. Both of those signal the pancreas to release insulin, but only because blood sugar is rising. Over the next hour or so, gastric emptying slows, and your satiety signal peaks. That's the "I'm full" feeling kicking in. Then, as blood sugar starts to come back down 2 to 3 hours later, glucagon rises to release a controlled amount of stored sugar and keep your levels stable. Normally, that entire cycle resets every time you eat. It's like a relay race. Each hormone carries the baton for a few minutes and hands it off. A once-weekly drug like Retatrutide isn't trying to copy that short relay exactly. It's closer to asking one runner to hold the baton and keep jogging steadily for 7 straight days instead of a few minutes, turning a short meal-triggered pulse into one sustained signal across the whole week. Here's a result that's measured, not theoretical. In a sub-study on fatty liver disease, researchers used MRI-based imaging to directly track liver fat. At 24 weeks, relative liver fat reductions were about 43% at 1 milligram, 57% at 4 milligrams, 81% at 8 milligrams, and 82% at 12 milligrams, versus essentially no change on placebo. Published commentary has called that 82% figure the most potent pharmacological liver fat reduction reported for any drug to date. The first controlled data set came from a phase 2 trial. 338 adults with obesity or overweight, no diabetes, randomized and placebo-controlled over 48 weeks, testing 1, 4, 8, and 12 milligram doses. By week 24, doses were already separating clearly from placebo. By week 48, the 12 milligram group reached a mean weight loss of 24.2%. At the time, the largest result ever recorded for an incretin-based drug. And the curve was still trending downward when the study ended, meaning researchers hadn't even found where it levels off yet. Quick myth check here, because this gets misread constantly. A still falling curve at trial's end does not mean unlimited weight loss. It means the study wasn't long enough to find the plateau, which is exactly why longer trials were run next. TRIUMPH-4 was the first phase 3 readout, testing 9 and 12 milligram doses in 445 adults with obesity and knee osteoarthritis. At 12 milligrams, average weight loss was 28.7%, around 71 pounds. Knee pain scores dropped by up to 4.5 points, roughly a 75.8% reduction, and more than 1 in 8 participants reported being completely pain-free by the end. The trial also showed improvements in cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood pressure. Meaningful, because this drug is doing more than just moving the number on a scale. Transcend T2D1 enrolled 537 adults with type 2 diabetes not adequately controlled by diet and exercise alone. A1C reductions reached up to 2.0 percentage points versus about 0.8 on placebo, substantial in a population that had already failed lifestyle-only management. Weight loss reached up to 16.8%, or about 36.6 pounds at 12 milligrams, with no plateau observed by the time the 40-week trial ended. This is the pivotal trial. 2,339 participants, the largest in the entire program, followed for 80 weeks. Average weight loss reached 17.6% at 4 milligrams, 23.7% at 9 milligrams, and up to roughly 28% at 12 milligrams, compared to just 3.9% on placebo. For scale, no currently approved obesity drug has demonstrated average weight loss in that range. Tirzepatide's ceiling was around 22.5%. In an extended subgroup that continued to week 104, weight loss reached up to 30%. And across the full 12 milligram group, 45.3% of participants lost at least 30% of their body weight, territory that starts to approach outcomes typically associated with bariatric surgery. Important caveat, these are sponsor-reported top-line numbers, not yet a full peer-reviewed publication. Pulling it all together, gastrointestinal effects remain the most common issue across every trial. Nausea in the high 30s to low 40% range at top doses, diarrhea around 28 to 34%, vomiting around 15 to 20%, consistently peaking during dose escalation. The newest signal is dysesthesia, abnormal skin sensations like tingling or burning, showing up in roughly 1 in 5 participants at the highest dose, generally described as mild. Gallbladder events and pancreatitis occur at low rates, consistent with the broader drug class. And one thing that genuinely hasn't been answered yet, long-term cardiovascular outcomes. A dedicated outcomes trial enrolling roughly 10,000 participants is ongoing, but isn't expected to report until 2028 or 2029. So here's the honest comparison. Semaglutide, one receptor, roughly 15% weight loss. Tirzepatide, two receptors, roughly 22–23%. Retatrutide, three receptors, now demonstrated 25–30% in a trial 7 times larger than its own phase 2 predecessor. What it doesn't have is a completed head-to-head trial against either of those drugs, and it doesn't have approval. The only legitimate access right now is clinical trial enrollment. An FDA submission is widely expected by the end of 2026, with realistic approval landing sometime in late 2027 or 2028. Those are projections based on standard review timelines, not confirmed dates. So here's where that leaves us. Retatrutide has produced some of the largest weight loss and liver fat results ever recorded in a controlled trial, and the mechanism genuinely explains why. At the same time, it's still investigational. GI effects and dysesthesia are real, and long-term cardiovascular data won't exist for years. If you remember one thing, the strongest drug in a class is only as good as its worst unanswered question. And here, that question is still long-term safety, not efficacy. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and let me know what you want covered next.